There is a group of plants that were thriving on the Earth during the age of the dinosaurs. Today, there are more than 10,000 species of this type of plants spreading all over the world. And they can be found in any place where people live. Walk down any alley and you will meet an ancient form of life in the cracks of the walls called a fern. It's not an unusual experience. The etymology of the Chinese word for fern is also interesting. The character has the grass radical, cao, which indicates that it is a plant. The other part of the character, jie, which came from the character jie, means to fall down. When we fall, just like the young fronds of the fern, our knees bend like the character ni when they are curled up. The foot symbol, zu, on the character was taken off. Then the grass radical, cao, was added, and that's how the character jie was born. Scientists believe that life began in the seas, gradually evolving from protista into the complex organisms of today. Ferns and mosses evolved to exist on land 370 million years ago. The vascular structures evolved in ferns make water transportation more efficient and also enhance support of the plant, allowing the ferns to thrive in a broader habitat. It was a major evolutionary breakthrough. People can easily recognize ferns by certain features. For example, ferns have a vascular structure. Their young fronds often form a question mark shape. And their sporophytes and gametophytes can survive independently. Many ferns can be used in horticulture and even as elements of handicrafts. Some ferns are edible. Some are used in medicine. Some are capable of fixing nitrogen and can be used as a green fertilizer. These are what we use from ferns. You can see that they are indeed all around us. After getting a basic understanding of ferns, let's talk about some of their interesting names. Ferns are usually named based on their outward appearances. Each name has its own meaning, just like our own names. So, recognizing the names of the different species is not that difficult. For example, Cyathea lepifera. It's called the snake tree by its scale-like leaf scars on the tree trunk. Angiopteris evecta. It's called the Guanyin lotus throne, which look like lotus throne on which the goddess Guanyin stands. Asplenium antiquum. In Chinese, it's called bird's nest fern, like a nest on a tree. Equisetum. In Chinese, it's called ground paintbrush, whose strobilus looks like a paintbrush on the ground. The Taria lineata. In Chinese, it's called bookstrap fern, with long, slim frond. Venus hair fern. In Chinese, it's called wiry fern. It has long black rachis that looks like hair. Nephrolopus cordifolia, it's called kidney fern. It has juicy egg-like corms and called iron eggs in Chinese. These ferns really do look like their names, don't they? Since ferns do not flower, their fine fronds are their most attractive part. The curled-up young fronds look like the small fists of sleeping infants. Their young fronds curl open, just as if infants were stretching when waking up. Morphological variation of frond shapes, from single to multi-pinnate compound fronds, show the diversity of ferns. Fronds of some ferns are as long as 3 meters, while some are even less than 1 centimeter. There are also some ferns with dormant buds on the rachis that can constantly grow and extend after they come out of dormancy. Some fronds have adventitious buds on their surfaces that produce rows of small fronds when they sprout. Some fronds have adventitious buds on their tips that sprout a new plant when they touch the ground. As the tips spread longer and longer, the new plants are connected to the original plant, like they are holding hands crossing the trail. Thus are given the name walking ferns. The beauty of ferns makes us stand in awe of nature's wonders. Ferns reproduce via spores, but where can the spores be found? Sori are the key. Sori can often be found on the backs of mature fronds. They are formed by a group of sporangia, which are sacs filled with spores. Each sporangium contains 32 or 64 spores. When the sporangia are mature, they shoot out the spores by distortion of the annulus around the sporangium, like stretching the body back to throw a baseball. In the species whose sporangia are without an annulus, the sporangia are ripped open like a piñata, allowing the spores to spread in the air. As these spores drift away by the wind, sometimes as far as hundreds of kilometers, they will grow and start a new life when they land in a suitable environment. In some ferns, sori are protected by the indusia, which come in many shapes, such as linear, shield-shaped, kidney-shaped, spherical, bowl-shaped, and clamshell-shaped. Sori may also come from reflexing leaf margin as a false indusium. However, in some ferns, sori are not covered by an indusium. Thus, characteristics on arrangement of the sori and whether or not they have indusia are often the basis for classification in ferns. How is life transmitted without a seed? We can see that ferns have roots, stems, and fronds. And this body form is fern sporophyte. with a double set of chromosomes that can produce spores with a single set of chromosomes through meiosis. The spores germinate to form a small body called gametophyte. The antheridia and the archegonia on the gametophyte produce gametes, which are sperms and eggs, respectively. The sperms swim into the archegonium and fertilize the egg to form a zygote with a double set of chromosomes in the archegonium. Then the zygote develops into an embryo, and later the embryo sprouts into a young sporophyte, which grows into a mature plant, completing the life cycle. In general, the biggest difference from a seed plant is that ferns, sporophytes, and gametophytes can live independently, while the gametophytes of seed plants must rely on the sporophytes and cannot live independently. The evolution of ferns onto the land did not only change the environment of the Earth, but also allow ferns to adapt to every corner of the planet. Taiwan is a fern paradise waiting to be appreciated. Taiwan is located in a warm, rainy subtropical region, and there is a great altitude difference in its terrain, which gives Taiwan different types of forests with all kinds of habitats and sufficient rain to develop a diversity of ferns. On this small island, with an area of 36,000 square kilometers, there are more than 600 species of ferns, among which more than 70 species are endemic. These ancient plants have the survival mechanisms to adapt to different environments, from low to high altitudes, and from mountains to coast. Let's enter the kingdom of the ferns and appreciate the many faces of ferns in Taiwan. Climate in the low-altitude regions in Taiwan is subtropical, and according to these various environments, ferns live in habitats that can generally be divided into dry and moist ones. On dry, hilly land, ferns usually play the role of ground layer vegetation. Whereas in moist valleys or forests, a variety of ferns appear, such as large tree ferns, medium-sized, and various types of epiphytic ferns. A whole patch of ferns can be seen growing on stone pitching and perimeter walls. As for epiphytic ferns, the environment on a tree trunk is a disadvantageous one, which neither retain moisture nor have enough organic nutrients as in soil. Therefore, they have developed their own way of surviving. Spleenwort forms into a nest shape to catch litters or dust falling from the canopy to acquire nutrients. And it also collects rainfall. Pseudodronaria coronans has fronds that bulge at the base and grow around the tree trunk to collect rotting leaves and rainfall. Dronaria fortunae has two different types of leaves. One is used for photosynthesis and reproduction, and the other is used to collect rotting vegetable matter and dust in the air, and also protect the buds. With the sunlight shining among the trees, you can observe the shapes and veination of the fronds, and elegant statues of these ferns. It's like seeing an ancient spirit hidden inside, and you can really hear the story of the ferns being told. The mid-altitude regions in Taiwan are called cloud forests because they are covered by clouds and mist all year round. It is the main habitat for ferns. For its special climate and rich layer of decayed organic matter in the soil, ferns in this area are usually mid-sized ferns, about 50 to 90 centimeters tall. For ferns growing on tree trunks or rocks, the clouds provide sufficient moisture. Plagiogyria is the indicator plant for this area. Others are the ancient family of Lycopodiaceae, Monochisorum henryi, with fist-like adventitious buds. All types of ferns decorate the forests enveloped in clouds. A cold wind blows across the high-altitude grasslands above 3,000 meters, and temperatures differ greatly between night and day. Ice and snow cover the surfaces during the winter. It is not easy for plants to grow. Therefore, plants crawl low to the ground and adapt to high-altitude conditions. Being short is a characteristic of high-altitude ferns. Some of the ferns grow on high-altitude grasslands. Some are hidden in forest grounds. Some can be seen on rocky slopes or struggling to survive in between the cracks of boulders. There are ferns living on the coastlines even though the salinity is high, sunlight is intense, and the moisture is low. They endure the harsh conditions, taking advantage of any good times to weather the bad times. There are water ferns in rice paddies and in ponds. They are usually smaller and have larger intercellular spaces or air chambers inside their bodies to float on the water. The fronds of Salvinia line up on the surface of the water. It is perennial, with long strands of modified underwater fronds. The Azolla pinnata ver africana often floats in rice paddies or slowly flowing rivers. With sufficient sunlight, it can quickly spread out in all directions. When winter comes, its green fronds turn red like maple leaves. Marsillae minuta, also called four-leaf clover, looks like lucky clover on the water. Isoetes taiwanensis live on rotting mud in ponds. It looks like chives growing in the water. It is currently only found in Menghuan Pond in Yangmingshan National Park. Next time when you have the chance to visit a clean paddy field or wetlands, don't forget to look for the signs of other water ferns. From the waters to the mountains, there are many types of ferns growing in Taiwan. They pass the days and nights surviving in their own way. The many types of ferns that we have just talked about only make up a small portion of the total number of endemic species in Taiwan. Remembering the names of these ferns is not the main purpose of this film for you. It is important for everyone to appreciate the beauty of these organisms and even treasure and protect them. Human beings are not the only inhabitants on the earth, but are the only ones that can exploit the Earth's resources on a large scale. All life and all habitats deserve respect, and the great issue here is how to allow all organisms to survive continuously by following the guiding principle of sustainable development and coexisting with nature. Over a long period of time, human activities and developments have led to shrinkage of the habitats for ferns. Collections for commercial or pharmaceutical purposes have caused a sharp decline in the numbers of certain species. A serious lack of respect to nature disconnects us farther and farther away from the land. However, land ethics and the natural ecosystem are so closely related to our lives. The extinction of species represents the gradual breakup of ecosystems. Thus, protecting the diversity of species is a pressing concern today. More public resources need to be invested in the conservation and research of ferns. This is the Campus Wetland Botanical Garden, prepared by the teachers and students of Pingxi Elementary School. With the hard work of the teachers and students over the past 2 years, they have seen preliminary progress on the water fern restoration. We can see the power of conservation in this simply small area of wetlands. We hope that this conservation trend will spread across all over Taiwan, just like the fern spores scattered by the wind. Observing nature is not about how much you know, but about how much you appreciate. The more you appreciate, the more humble you are. We hope that learning about ferns will inspire appreciation and affection of them, thereby promoting conservation education. The lush mountain forests of Taiwan nurture many precious types of life, and this paradise of ferns needs our care. Let's allow the diversity of ferns to enrich our lives and pass this boundless treasure on to the next generation.